It's Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Heung-min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guests every time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where tonight we actually have some positive stuff to talk about. I know we've been very positive on the show so far this season, but we've actually got a draw to talk about against City, and I'm joined by three fabulous guests. So first of all, Mitch, it's lovely to have you back on the show. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm relatively happy with how Spurs played at the weekend. I enjoyed it, and you know, when you score an equaliser in the 90th minute, you sort of take that, especially when you're away at the treble winners. So yeah, relatively happy with how things went this weekend, and looking forward to talking about it as well as what's coming up this week as well.
Defo, yeah. There's a lot to dissect in that game, to say the least. But I'm also joined by Sonny as well. Sonny, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, good. After a few weeks of a few disappointments and unlucky, not getting results where I think we deserve some points, it was good to maybe get a bit of a rub of the green, especially after that Simon Hooper decision at the end.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that because it seems to be at the moment that there's a game that goes past, but there's never a bit of controversy. But luckily this time we were on the right side of it. And also joined by Kerrie. Kerrie, it's lovely to have you on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been a great weekend, I think, but part of me still thinks we could have won it, but we'll have to dissect into that later.
Definitely, 100%. And welcome to everybody else that's joining as well. Hello. Hope you're all well. Mix tuning in from Oz. My words, you are a dedicated watcher, so thank you very much, my friends. But let's drive straight into it. So, Mitch, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, thoughts before the game. How are you kind of feeling going into it?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because I saw that we'd beaten City something like 5 of the last 7 games, but whenever we play them, I sort of approach it as a free hit, and sort of like, if we lose the game, then you've just lost to the champions. You've lost to a team that won 3 major trophies last year, including the Champions League. They're the best team in Europe. They're powerhouses. They've got some of the best players in the world. But I don't know. There's always that feeling when you go into the game that I sat there and I said to my mates, I said, we'll go 1-0 up and then we'll concede quite quickly after. And then from there, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's exactly what did happen. So, yeah, it was just a roller coaster of emotions. And I feel like it's almost a bit scripted every time we play City these days. So, again, it was a game that didn't disappoint, especially from a neutral fan. And when we scored that equaliser in the last minute, I didn't really want to I had to walk away for the last 5 minutes of injury time, because I've seen it so many times before, especially against City, where they'll have at least a big chance or a goal, and there'll be controversy there. So I was anticipating all of that being involved in the game, and it was. But luckily we got something out of it, and thankfully avoided that looming 4th defeat in a row in the Premier League. So hopefully a turn of a page and the start of an upturn in form for us again.
Definitely. I think that's the best way to put it. You must have a magic ball or something, Mitch. Like, you were proper on it with your thoughts before the game. But obviously, Sonny, when the game kicked off, I don't know about you, but I felt like we were a little bit penned in, and that was stressing me out a tiny little weeny bit. Oh, I think you're on mute, Sonny.
Sorry, I'm not in my usual setting. But yeah, it gave me the vibe of like the games that have come in the past against City, like being penned in, them absolutely battering us. But it felt a bit different because obviously instead of having this like part the bus mentality like Conte and Mourinho, we had this Angeball mentality, which I prefer obviously and love to bits, but it felt a bit more like every attack they could score instead of, usually they have 18 shots and don't score any of them. But yeah, it was a weird game, and I do think we grew into it. I did think, the Højbjerg sub for Hill at halftime was the game changer, I believe. And, City have this weird vibe. I said, my claim to fame, like Mitch, I said 2 minutes before we scored the Lo Celso goal, I was like, this is the time. They're looking a bit like, it's like Liverpool again. This is the time to strike. And we did. And then when Grealish scored, I was a bit more disappointed. But it's a typical Tottenham game. You go in thinking you're going to get battered 5-0. You get a bit more optimism. Then it goes back down again where you were worse at the beginning, and then you sort of come back and you're still jubilant. So honestly, my heart rate was going like the clappers.
Yeah, mine was all over the gaff. I'm not going to lie to you. I was stressed, then I was happy, stressed again. But like I say, I think that's just Tottenham in general. But obviously, I want to home in on the bit, Sonny, where you've said about obviously we managed to score, and I want to come to you, Kerrie, because it was almost like the Tottenham of old, dare I say it, in that terms of counter attack, because it was a really good counter attack, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I was just thinking, like, obviously, I knew Cooley was going to score today, and he had a poor game up until that point, in my opinion. I thought he was so one-sided. He was kind of reminding me of Anthony, where he wasn't constantly on the right, on his right foot, and trying to shift it onto the left. I was like, oh no, this can't be happening. And then obviously he comes out and scores a banging header over Ake. Hard to believe it.
No, it was good. That obviously that final goal was a madness, and I think, like we've all kind of alluded to at the start of the game, we all kind of knew that it was going to get to a point where it would either swing in our way, our favour, or City's favour. And lucky it was our favour. But Solly, I want to come back to you before I go to Mitch, and I want to talk about, obviously, Solly managed to score that goal first of all. And then straight down the other end, we talk about him needing to be a tiny little bit more clinical. Well, he was clinical against City because he managed to score in our own net as well. What did you kind of make of that crazy amount of, like, what was it, 5-10 minutes?
I mean, at the moment, without Romero and Mickey, set pieces to me, attacking and defensively, are just a bit of a write-off. We've got no height in there. Apart from Udogie, I think there's not many people like over 6 foot. So when that ball swings in, it just reminded me of Romero as well against Arsenal, the Saka goal. Well, I say the Saka goal, his own goal, where he just sort of stuck his leg out. There's not much you can do about it. But it's a bit annoying because I feel like if he had left it, Gavardio wasn't really like awake to it at the back post. So it felt like one of those moments. And, you know, even when we went 1-0 up, I was a bit surprised. But to concede straight away, I was thinking, like, oh, here we go. We're here for the floodgates are going to open sort of thing. And then they got the second, where I feel like the second, again, was the only goal out of the 3 that we conceded where it was quite poor defensively. I feel like to allow Bernardo Silva to turn there and Foden sort of like come through the middle as well, it was a bit disappointing. But it's just hard to judge. I feel like, you know, every game I watch in my group chats, they're like, this is going to be the best game of the season. It seems to involve Tottenham in one way, shape or another. I just think, you know, obviously I love the style of play and there is still a lot to learn. And for this team to, you know, I just can't judge this team at the moment with all the injuries, especially in a defensive capacity. Like the midfield is not, you know, in the first half, I think the midfield wasn't helping the defence. And, you know, we're playing 4 full-backs at the back. And even after conceding 3, I have to say, like, Emerson and Davis have still done quite a solid job. And I've been I've critiqued those 2 quite a lot, along with the likes of Dyer and, you know, Højbjerg. And I think, you know, Højbjerg especially, shout out to him for coming on. The second time I've said this already, but I still think he really shored that midfield up. And people moan again about Ange's subs and sometimes his in-game like tactics and swaps, but that was an example of a really good one.
No, definitely. And I think there was parts of me during that game, because obviously I was screaming for Hill to come off towards the end of that first half. And then when Højbjerg came on, he irritated me for a little bit because there was countless times when he gave the ball away and I was like, oh my words. But you make a good quote about obviously the midfield. And Mitch, I'll come to you because obviously someone in that midfield that we've been longing to come back after suspension is Bissouma. And I don't know about you, but I don't think he had the best of games against City, did he?
Yeah, he's been a little bit off since he got sent off against Luton. He's not really been that same player that we saw for the first few games. I'm not entirely sure why that is, to be honest with you, Holes. I really, really like Bissouma, and I think the way that he started the season, I think he showed the kind of player that he can be for us. And I just wonder if there's playing the way Ange wants you to, which is playing dangerously and making those turns and looking for those passes, and then there's maybe taking it a step too far. And I feel like Bissouma was right on the edge of that yesterday. I think the issue is you're playing City, who have got obviously a really good high press at their own stadium, and on the one hand, it's really good to see someone having that confidence to go up against the best team in Europe and say, right, I'm going to turn into these 3 midfielders behind me here. I'm going to either go past them or play around them. I've got absolutely no issue with that. But, you know, we probably could have sat there and counted 7, 8, 9 times that he did it across the game yesterday, which is maybe putting it in jeopardy a little bit. And I don't like to agree with Gary Neville because he annoys me a lot on commentary. But he was right in the point that he was saying that he was causing us a lot of issues because of where he was losing the ball, and City did have a lot of chances because of it. However, I think if you look at it, if you're playing against a weaker side, then he probably gets out of a lot more of those situations. Not discrediting the teams in the Premier League, but we've seen already against some of the teams that we played earlier in the season that he is capable of being able to do what he was trying to do against City. So, yeah, look, it's fine to have a couple of games where you're off the boil, and he will come good again. We've sat here and we've seen and we've spoken about how good of a player he is and can be. And it's going to be a big few months for him in this Christmas period, with obviously Bentancur being injured again, no Maddison, and potentially no Sarr. We don't know how long he's out for. So yeah, we'll stick behind him and hopefully he can turn it around and have a really good game against West Ham on Thursday.
Definitely. I think the thing is, it is those kind of suspensions, the fact that he's had those kind of gaps in time. We always talk about momentum in football, and the fact that he's been out for a couple of games here and there, it kind of hasn't, I don't necessarily say dampened his confidence, but you kind of see that he hasn't really been playing to his best. But I want to stick with you, Kerrie, because obviously we've touched a little bit on the defence, and don't get me wrong, I'm not enjoying that much seeing Davies and Emerson, but obviously Haaland missed some sitters in that game, so can we say that they managed to pocket Haaland? Would you go that far?
I wouldn't. I would say that Haaland had an extremely off day, and where he got so angry at the end, he only has himself to blame, where he could have had a hat-trick easily. I do not like seeing Emerson Royale as a centre-back. Every time he gets on the ball, he makes me nervous because he's obviously always trying to run it or he's playing it through the lines. And Davies, I don't mind being at the back because he's been there before, but Emerson, I don't even want him on the pitch full stop, but obviously with the injury concerns, we obviously don't have much of a choice.
No, it's a good chat, and I think there was times yesterday where I was thinking like you, I was like, please don't run the ball there, please don't make that pass there. But again, I think that's just the way that they're being kind of hoisted into this kind of role of having those four fullbacks along the back line. But Sonny, obviously there's been lots of shouts for the young players to come into the game and play in this centre-back role. I mean, I think we've had lots of discussions before about it, but is it too soon to push these young players on? I know we saw, was it Donnelly that came on towards the end of putting them in, but I don't think it's right to maybe...
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been an advocate to bleeding them in, but I think we saw everyone wanted Phillips to start, but then he picked up an injury, another one to the list, and then you've got Donnelly is being highly touted to get more involved, and Alfie Dorrington as well. And I think Ange's a clever manager. It's not like Conte and Mourinho are just not going to give you the chance. He will, but I don't think he is in the ballpark of just chucking them in the deep end, especially in such a game as this. And you don't want to ruin the confidence of these players. They're having quite a good time in the under-21s, under-18s, all the youth squads. And, it's good for him to get some minutes. He made quite a vital block at the end. There's all the stuff on Twitter now. He's become the 860-something player to don a Tottenham shirt in the Premier League. So it's like a nice sort of, you want them to sort of be, put on their pedestal and sort of put an arm around them, made sure they're just not really, the worst thing he would have done was maybe chucked him in against this game and Haaland turned him inside out like a Dorrington or something like that, or Donnelly. I mean, Donnelly could start maybe over Brian Hill now. I think Brian Hill's had 2 games and we've not seen much from him, so maybe there's a chance for him, but then Richarlison's back. It's good to have some competition. It's good to rely on these youth players. But, I mean, when I saw some fans saying, I'll just start Phillips and Dorrington against Wolves, even I was like, maybe, but I still think even chucking them in a game like that would have been quite an extreme test to start their Premier League careers.
Definitely. I think there's a fine line between chucking a player in at the deep end and watching them thrive, or they could, sink. And luckily, like you say, I think finally seeing Donnelly come on towards the end is potentially how Ange's going to play it, and I think that would be quite nice. But obviously, I want to go back. I'm all over the gas tonight, but I want to go back to obviously that Foden goal, Mitch, because I know we've spoken a little bit about the defence. But what did you kind of make of that? Because I thought it was just a bit of a calamity. Do you not think?
It was just the signs of a defence that's kind of been thrown together, and you could see that they were out of shape, and you could see that they weren't positionally aware, both Ben Davies and Emerson. I mean, again, it's not entirely on them and down to them, because you've got to remember that, you know, Phil Foden's an exceptional player. The players they're coming up against in attack for City are so good, and they'll do that to most teams this season. But, you know, I think it was more a case of getting the basics wrong from a defender's point of view. You know, being stagnant and staying still when players are passing around you, especially in the box. You have to track the runners, you have to follow them, and there wasn't really any excuse for Foden having the time that he did in the box to be able to get that shot off and score their goal for him. So, yeah, it's difficult, because I got a bit frustrated with Emerson at the back during the game, just purely because he really scares me. He scares me because he looks like he's going to do something ridiculous with the ball every time he's on it. You don't know if he's going to fake it, or if he's going to try and go round someone, or whether he's going to pass it, or God knows what with it. And of course, he's not the most physical bloke in the world, is he? So it was just a bit, I guess, concerning when you're coming up against Haaland, who is probably the complete opposite. And yeah, it was just one of those holes, wasn't it? You know, when you're missing players of the caliber of Romero and Van der Ven at centre back, what do you do when, you know, Eric Dyer's pulled up injured, so you're not got any physicality there? Ashley Phillips injured as well. Again, Dorrington perhaps not quite ready to be chucked in against perhaps the best striker in the world at the moment. So yeah, it was a calamity, you're right, and it was a mess. Having said that, for some weird reason, I seem to remember watching much worse defensive Spurs performances in the past. So, you know, at the end of the day, we came out of it. Yes, we conceded 3 goals, but we still picked up a point. And I think that's Ange's mentality, is like, okay, with these two in centre-back, with Davis and Emerson, okay, we're going to concede goals. I think he's just accepted that. But the quality we have in attack is so good that he's backing us to score as well. And, you know, we did that and got ourselves a, in my opinion, deserved and well-earned point.
100%. And I'm also glad that you mentioned, obviously, that mentality, because, Kerrie, I'm going to come to you. I mean, there's been many times where we've watched Spurs, and it's almost like we kind of stop, put the pedal on the brake. But it seems with this Ange style of play, regardless of, like Mitch said, with those two at the back, we still managed to carry on till the very death, obviously, with that Decky goal. So for you, could this be the turning point? Is this Ange finally managing to get these players to change mentality?
I think they've had this mentality since the Chelsea game. I think that's when it stood out to me the most, was obviously we was 2 men down, and obviously we ended up losing the game, but we didn't stop until the end. And obviously, as you know, we were both there and we saw that firsthand. But again, when we obviously, was it Wolves where we conceded in the last minute? I wasn't too impressed with that. But then yesterday, again, it's the resurgence of, you know, showing the grit and the determination, even though we're injury ridden at the minute. Just showing that even all the squad rotation is just trying their best to try and get results through a difficult period of games in this Christmas period.
You've definitely hit the nail on the head there, and kind of coming to you, Sonny, in a sense as well. Obviously, it's not just the good players, shall I say, it's all of these players now, and they're all feeding into that same kind of ethos. And I know we said at the very start of the season, will Ange be able to get this? And he is already. I mean, we said at the very start of the first couple of games it was showing through, but I feel like now this City game is really a true testament to that.
I just think like these players they've gone through the ringer in the last 5 or so years, like having some, you know, top quality managers. I can't lie, maybe not Nuno, but, you know, Poch, Mourinho and Conte, who have, you know, had their moments in football, but have come to the stage where, you know, Tottenham probably wasn't the right project for them, and the players just couldn't handle that style of football and that style of coaching. But Ange has come in, you know, we can see from the fan base as well. The last I went to the Villa game, and the atmosphere after that, you wouldn't have felt it was a loss. Everyone's still optimistic. But then last season, after the West Ham game that I went to, and Arsenal, even though the West Ham game was a win and Arsenal was a loss, the atmosphere was just a lot different. The fan base was a bit, you know, arguing amongst each other and a bit toxic. But now it seems like, you know, the whole vibe around the football club, the squad, the players, just the management, the staff, it seems really good. And I found it funny. I don't know if anyone watched the pre-match, Son and Ange talking about like the Asia Cup final a couple of years ago. or 10 years ago, I think it was. And then Roy Keane absolutely saying, I don't understand this relationship between a captain and a manager. And I was just like, give me a break. Like, come on, like you want that sort of like, you know, mentality in a club that's not just winning, but like it is like that good atmosphere of you all want to head in the right direction and, you know, become winners because, you know, we've been striving for this for years at Tottenham. You know, we want to win trophies. We want to compete at the very top. And we had that under Pochettino, but we're finally, I think, getting that aura again of like trying to do something. Because even like, you know, people wrote us off yesterday and we went to the Etihad, played Ange ball, where everyone was like, you're going to get absolutely annihilated 5-0. And don't get me wrong, we conceded goals, but we also scored goals and, you know, played a brand of football where, you know, like passed it around the back against the treble winners. So, you know, it just makes you laugh how Tottenham are sort of treated at the moment. One week, Ange's bubbles burst. Next week, are we title contenders again or something? It just, I don't know. It just confuses myself.
It is very much a whirlwind at the moment with the media. But Mitch, I want to talk to you about a different man, and that is Gio, because we're talking about players having a resurgence under Ange, this, that, and the other. And I think he really is one of those players that is absolutely saying that is his resurgence, isn't it?
Yes, I remember getting his name on the back of my shirt when he first joined the club, and I'm very, very happy to see him performing well for us. It's not been an easy ride for him at Tottenham, and I think despite the fact that he's gone out and had a couple of decent loan spells where he's not been awful, he's always come back and struggled to break into that team. But I think the last 2 games where he started, he's been probably in the top 3 performers. You know, welcome to disagree with me on that, but I thought again yesterday he was excellent. And I saw a stat on Twitter earlier that said I think it was actually from Spurs, that he completed 40 out of 40 passes, 100% success rate against the best team in Europe, no less. That's not obviously an easy thing to do. And of course, they're not all going to be defence splitting diagonal passes across the pitch or whatnot. But you know, even being able to show that quality, to be able to retain the ball and keep hold of it. And I think I even saw a 2-minute highlight reel of his performance against City this morning. And, you know, even the way he was just playing in between 2 City players in tight areas and moving, it's not really something that we've seen from Lo Celso before in a Spurs shirt. He just looks like he's playing with that confidence, whereas maybe under a Conte or whoever was in charge when he first joined, he perhaps felt a little bit scared to play those sorts of passes and a bit reserved and worried about losing the ball and being perhaps more focused on his defensive duties. Whereas now you can see that he's got that freedom and ability to just push forward and be creative. And you know, we saw that again with his goal, which was a lovely strike, by the way. Both of the goals in the last 2 weeks have been excellent. So yeah, I'm really happy to see him doing well. And you know, I've got absolutely no issues with him staying in that midfield until Madders is back. If that's in the new year, then he's got a lot more games that he's going to be playing up until then. So fingers crossed he can keep fit as well, because you know we know he's another one who's susceptible to a few niggly injuries, and hopefully he can carry us forward and make it 3 goals in 3 matches against West Ham. You can have a hat-trick against him if you like.
No, that would definitely be nice. But no, it's true what you say. I think he's given this golden opportunity, Kerrie, obviously with Madders out of the picture for a little while. And with these goals that keep coming in, he's proving that he can potentially be the man while Madders is out. Not maybe even compete against Madders maybe in the new year.
I think he's a perfect backup, if I'm being completely honest. I think, obviously, where he's gone out on loan to try and find his form again, get more playing time under his belt, he's come back, he's realised, obviously, Spurs is the better club, and now he's trying to get himself back in the team. So even when Maddison does come back, he could potentially be a second option alongside him. And if, like, for example, we're seeing Basuma with a poor lack of form at the moment, if he's not doing, we could see him shift down maybe. But we'll just have to see how it goes. But I think Christmas period, as long as he stays fit, I think he'll be a good kind of midfield piece for us going forward.
Lovely. And like you say, we've missed that kind of creativeness, and the fact that Sonny, he can find the back of the net when needed. It kind of shows you that, okay, Madders is out, but actually we've got this guy Gio that can kind of do the same sort of thing.
I think that's what it is as well. Like, apart, sadly, with Bentancur's injury as well, we haven't got many forward passing thinking players. That's a mouthful. So we just sort of need that sort of creative spark. And yeah, popping up with a goal is fantastic. I mean, I don't want to say I've said anything, but I did a video on my YouTube channel sort of saying how he can improve the side and all that. And was reflected on his numbers and his time at Villarreal. And it goes to show that in the summer, I sort of thought that Tanguy Ndombele could be this player to sort of like take that second chance. You know, some of these players have, I keep saying, played under all these managers. Take your second chance, maybe a rebirth. And I thought he'd be the person who'd just be sold. You know, I think he was linked with Villa, funny enough, Barcelona, back to Villarreal as well. But it seems like, you know, he's the one who's taken an opportunity through, you know, a sadness in an injury and really come into his own. And, you know, watching him against Villa was a treat as well. You know, just clever passes, like Mitch was saying, not all these extravagant ones, but like, you know, keeping it moving, keeping that sort of, you know, Ange likes that fast-paced triangle sort of passes. And he's like key for that. And, yeah, I hope that he can sort of improve Bissouma's form, because I feel like Bissouma did well through, like, him and Maddison linked up really well, and like him and Bentancur would have been fantastic as well. It's just in the system, it's the 6 is so important for the other 2 midfielders, I think. So if all 3 of them are working in tandem, then, you know, we've got something special in that area of the pitch.
Yeah, and talking about someone special, I also want to bring up Decky as well. I know I've said his name already tonight, but Mitch, I mean, Decky's a funny player. He seems to sit well with some fans and not so well with other fans. But I don't know how people can slate his performance against City, obviously, with that amazing ball through to Sonny and obviously that incredible header at the end. I mean, what have you made of Decky's performance in the City game and pretty much in general this season?
I love that man. He is exceptional. I wrote an article about him today, and I think he is so underrated by so many people. I think he's got so much quality. He's 23. He's a couple of months, I think, older than Saka and Foden. Is in that same bracket. And I think I saw someone say, I haven't fact-checked this, by the way, so don't quote me on it, but I think I saw someone say that he has more non-penalty goals than Saka this season, which, you know, he's on 4 for the season already. Last season, he only got 2. And we're finally back to seeing that version of him that was, you know, hit the ground running when he signed for us last year back in January. So I think he is so technically gifted, and I think he's one of those players that is probably going to be better for us eventually in a more central role. And I think we're seeing that with the last 2 starts that he's had, where he's had to fill in a central role. I think he said himself that he's played centrally all his life. That's where he prefers to be. But, you know, even out on the wing, he's not the quickest of players in the world, but he still manages to get past his opponents because he's that much sharper and he's got that burst to be able to get away from them and just be thinking 1, 2, 3 steps in front of the opposition defenders. But I think we went through a period at the end of last season where we were all a bit frustrated with him because perhaps he wasn't just quite clicking in the final third. He was taking the wrong opportunities, not shooting enough and not picking out the right passes, and perhaps becoming a little bit predictable. But I think since Maddison's been out with his injury, he has been the man to step up. Of course, Sonny's always chipped in with his goals, and we know what a value to the club he is as the captain as well. But Kulusevski, for me, he is the guy that has stepped up and carried our sort of attacking force forward in the absence of Maddison. And I just, again, on Sunday against City, his performance was excellent. I think he scored 3 matches in a row at the Etihad. Again, how many players can say that they've done that? He's a real breath of fresh air, and you know, his header just sums up. Do you know what? There's so many things I love about him, but the thing I love most about him is how much he runs. Mm-hmm. The amount of legs that he's got in him, and he's just going until the very last second. And you know, that header, that goal in the 90th minute yesterday just summed up the sort of player he is. You know, you're getting towards the end of the long, tough game against an excellent opposition, but he's still there, making that run into the box, throwing himself at the ball, completely going through the back of Ake, who's just come on. He's fresh. You know, he's trying to help City see the game out. And yeah, I think he seems to have found a bit of confidence in himself. And, you know, if you've seen the quotes and the videos of the interviews that he's done recently, you can see he's got almost a bit of swagger about him and just seems to be really enjoying his football. So it's really great to see. And yeah, he's very, very quickly, you know, becoming one of my favourite players at the club just because of how much effort he puts in and the quality and the delivery that we're now starting to see from him in terms of goals and assists as well.
I'm glad you mentioned his work rate, because I think everybody just points on the fact that he's not very quick, and that's what infuriates me. Because I don't know about you, Kerrie, because obviously we all know that he's not very quick, but you don't have to be pacey and fast to be a quality footballer, do you?
I think he's deceptively quick. I think his burst of pace is far superior compared to a lot of the other wingers we've got. But yeah, I always struggle sometimes because I sometimes think, he does look quite slow. And I was like, imagine if we had someone like a Sonny running onto that ball or whatever. But I do, looking back on it, I've been thinking about it all weekend. I think he is just deceptively fast. I think the way he carries himself, like he's preserving his energy. And then obviously we're seeing it towards the end of the game. I think it's finding the balance between his pace, which some may argue he doesn't have, and when to use it in terms of game time situations. And I think that's what it is.
I think that's a great spin on it in that kind of sense. And like you say, because maybe that is why he's able to carry on and then find those moments like he did against City with that header. But I think he's been amazing. I kind of echo what everybody's kind of saying. And I just want to pick on one more player before we kind of move on to the controversy side of things. And that is the fact that Doku, however you say his name, I call him Count Doku. But for you, Sonny, Pedro Porro, he didn't get a sniff, did he? Doku at the week. I mean, he had that shot, obviously, it hit the crossbar. But apart from that, I think Pedro Porro did very well to contain him.
Well, I think, again, speaking of players who divide opinions at Tottenham, I think Porro's up there with one of them because, I mean, I think I was excited about the signing, and then there was a couple of games. I think it was Wolves last year where he didn't, cover himself in any glory. But this year, I think he's been really, really good. And again, I feel like Porro knows when to go on the attack and when to defend. His game management in his areas become really good. And yeah, Doku, I mean, has started really brightly at City. I mean, got absolutely skinned for the Sun goal. I don't think, the fact that Sun sort of got round him was impressive in itself. I wasn't expecting that at all when the ball sort of bounced over. But yeah, hats off to Porro. I think, both fullbacks really did, I think they've been class this season. Good to have Udogie back as well after his suspension as well, last few games. But yeah, I mean, people were saying like Alvarez and all these players were going to, but Haaland, there was a few of them that caused us some mischief in the game, but Doku, to quiet him, because even my dad was saying the other week, he's a bit predictable, Doku. He does that little the little foot thing, I've done it, flip flap thing, and then if you just take him to the line, he's a bit predictable, a bit like how Mahrez could be sometimes. You sort of know he's going to cut in So, but then people say that about Kulusevski. He's like, he's just going to cut in. But these players know how to sort of spin it, they know what they're doing. But Doku just didn't yesterday.
No, 100% didn't get in, and I think it was quite nice as well. They hit the crossbar and it didn't go in as well. But I want to, before we wrap up, obviously that City game, Mitch, I'm going to come to you for the controversy, and obviously that was the whole fiasco where the ref played on from Haaland's challenge and then decided to blow his whistle when Grealish was through on goal. So I'm going to take my Tottenham hat off. I'm going to let you put your football hat on. What did you kind of make of that whole kind of passage of play?
Yeah, I mean, look, if it was the other way around, we would have been fuming, wouldn't we? It's one of those ones where the referee's got it wrong. You can see it in the video. He's sort of leaning, so I don't think he can see properly. And I'm just not sure that he's convinced that Grealish is getting anywhere near that ball. And to be fair, he does blow his whistle before the ball sort of hits his ground and he's running with it. So to that extent, you can kind of understand it. But, I mean, there's no doubting that he made the wrong decision there. He should have let it play. The advantage that he had played was barely even a second anyway, so he could have even carried on and then still brought it back if he needed to. But it's one of those. You'd be really frustrated if it was the other way around, and you can see why Haaland was really angry about it, and you can see why. I mean, City have been charged for failing to control their players now, and Haaland's tweet's probably going to get him in a little bit of trouble. It's just the emotions of the game. Having said that, and maybe I've still got my Tottenham hat on, Hollie, I don't know, you tell me, you have got to then rely on Jack Grealish carrying on that run and scoring. And there was no guarantee that he's going to do that. I know he's ahead of Davis, but there's no guarantee that he's going to still be ahead of Davis by the time he gets into the box and then get it past Vicario.
Vicario saves that.
You've got to bear in mind that it's on his left foot as well. It's not on his strong foot. So, there's no guarantees there, but I can really understand why City were really upset about it. And, it's just one of those, isn't it? The Premier League's full of so much crap and so many bad decisions and poor referees and officials. It's just added to the long list of things that have either gone for or against us this season. I lose count, and my memory doesn't even go back to the first game of the season, and I can't even remember all the incidents we've been involved in at this point. So, yeah, a frustrating one for them, but we got a point out of it. And as a Tottenham fan, I'm secretly happy about it, as I think most people are.
I think so, and I very rarely take off my Tottenham hat, and it's the fact that I could see if that was on the other foot, I would be fuming. But like you say, he's got to put it away. Grealish has to put that ball away for them to kick off, and sadly, he doesn't get the opportunity. My favourite thing that's come from it is obviously the memes of Haaland screaming in people's faces, which has made my Monday, to say the least. But we're going to move on slightly, move away from the controversy, move away from the City game. And Kerrie, I'm going to come to you, because obviously we do have West Ham on Thursday. Now, how are you kind of feeling going into this one, obviously after we've come out of a draw against City?
I'm not worried. I should be. I'm not. It's West Ham. Like, I don't know. The only person really I'm too concerned about would be Mohamed Kudus. He's just been banging in goals for fun, and it's just not fair. But I can't see it. I just think as long as we've got Sonny's going to get a hat trick. I'm calling it now. Bookmark it. He's getting a hat trick. I don't know. I think it really depends on the midfield combo that we go with, if I'm going to be honest. So whether he chooses or elects to play Basuma again, which I assume he will, because again, no players left in the squad. But he just needs to find a bit more form, and hopefully he'll play a little bit better than he did in the last game. It can't get much worse.
Please don't tempt fate and jinx it. But no, you're right. And obviously in that game, Sonny, I believe that Romero might be back for this one. So who's the player that's going to drop out? I'm guessing you're going to probably say Emerson.
I mean, logically, based on Davis being left-footed, if I have to be really boring about it. But I think Emerson's been all right as a centre-back. I think he looks more comfortable on the ball than Eric Dyer ever has, like in his centre-back career for Ange. But then again, he seems to have been played everywhere. He played left-back against Palace. He's played right-back at the start of the season. So bless Emerson for, being the Swiss Army knife of Tottenham this year. But yeah, I think logically Davis has to play there to, left-footed. Romero has to come back in. I think, with West Ham's physicality, set pieces, they'll look to score from. I mean, in this game, you'd like to think, after, scoring 3 against City, you think West Ham would be a doddle. But again, this is their cup final. I watched the game yesterday with a West Ham fan, and we ended up having a massive debate about the Conference League win that ended up going on for about 20 minutes. So, because that's like the biggest trophy ever, according to them. But yeah, I mean, even he said you're going to smack us up. So, but what it's like with Tottenham. We've gone into these games more optimistic, and you just can't call it. But I'm glad we're at home, because the home support at a West Ham game is usually quite fiery, intense. Atmosphere is going to be incredible. That's what I said about this run. I think the home form will help us a little bit. Just a shame with Villa that, a couple of moments of madness ended up being 2-1. Because, if we'd even got a draw against them and we get something against Newcastle and a win against, you look at these run of games and go, actually, we did all right, all things considered. But it's the way the cookie crumbles.
No, it definitely is. And like I say, now that we're at home, it might obviously sway in our favour a bit more. Not saying that obviously West Ham are going to be difficult or easy. I mean, Mitch, how do you kind of see this one panning out?
I hate playing West Ham. Do you know what they're saying about? There's something weird about the West Ham games where I actually feel more confident playing them away from home. And I don't know, it must be a mental thing for me, but I get petrified of losing at home to West Ham, because they absolutely love it, and I have quite a lot of friends who are West Ham fans, and they do make it last if they do end up beating us. And the most worrying thing for me is that we should win, and I hate saying that. I hate using the phrase "we should win," especially in our derby against one of our biggest rivals. But everything suggests that we should really outplay them and outscore them, but that's never the case. They always have that thing about them, West Ham, where they seem to be able to find a way to nick something or grab an early goal or something like that. So, yeah, I think Sonny's right in terms of the home support is going to be excellent. It always is. Midweek game, yeah, Thursday night, fine, whatever. But, the crowd will still be up for it. Should be a sellout. So you'd back us in that sense. I think the squad themselves will be really boosted with Romero back because, of course, he'll go straight back into a team and, he makes a big difference. I know he struggled perhaps last season with two other centre-backs next to him who weren't up to the same standard as him. But, I do back him to come in, and I'd be shocked if Emerson is still playing at centre-back on Thursday. But, yeah, he'll come in, and Romero Davis centre-back, you can almost sort of be like, okay, we can get behind that. It's not the worst thing in the world. As long as one of them are there, it's better than what we have had, isn't it? So, they played Bowen up top yesterday, West Ham, and he's just come back from an injury. Obviously kept him out of England duty over the international break. And I don't think I watched bits of it as well. I don't particularly think he looked fully fit. So I don't know what that will be like on Thursday. But yeah, I agree with what Kerrie was saying earlier. Kudus has been a very good player for them. I think he's already on 5 goals for the club. And he will be dangerous, and they do have dangerous players. The hype's died down a little bit around Paqueta, but I think we remember that City were quite desperate to sign him in the summer. We know he's a good player, and it's not going to be an easy game. And I hate having that mentality of thinking, okay, yeah, we should win. I'm looking forward to it because we should win. Which if you're looking at it logically, we should. But unfortunately, I think we all know as Tottenham fans that it's never that simple, and it's never usually the case. But we'll see. They've proved us wrong a lot of times so far this season. Hopefully they carry on doing that.
Definitely. Like we've all kind of said, I can never pinpoint how a game's going to go, even now with Ange Ball. And I think that will always remain with us, which is annoying, but it's just the Spurs way at the moment. But Mitch, I know you need to shoot, so I want to say a big thank you for joining us tonight. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. As usual, I'm just over on X at the moment at Mitch_Fretton. So feel free to go head over there and give me a follow if you like. And there's loads of games coming up, obviously, with December and just the busy, hectic schedule. So yeah, I'll be quite active on there for the next few weeks. But again, thank you very much for having me, Hollie, and brilliant to talk to Kerrie and Sonny as well. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again soon.
No worries. No, thank you again, Mitch, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Cheers,
bye. But yeah, obviously that's the game against West Ham, and then obviously the Newcastle game comes straight back up thick and fast. So Sonny, I'm going to come to you for that one. I feel like this is going to be a different kettle of fish, to say the least, from West Ham to Newcastle.
Newcastle confused me because even my dad said yesterday he was a massive Tottenham fan. He was like, people talk about Newcastle, they're behind us, and people saying about the crisis we're going through. Don't get me wrong, they've got a massive. It's like the injury list derby, this, isn't it? Like who's got more players out at the time of recording or time of play? But Newcastle confused me because 1 minute they look absolutely electric. Against Man United they were fantastic. Against PSG, I think they were a bit, camped against it, backs against the wall. Nick Pope's out now as well, absolutely massive for them. I think they'll have to play Dubravka. Don't know if Karius is still there. Hopefully he'd start. But yeah, it's that one is really hard to call as well. I mean, if it was at St James's, I think you're talking about a different game. But I still probably take a draw against them because they're so relentless, and the creativity from Trippier is fantastic. Anthony Gordon, I mean, the one that got away, you could say for Spurs, he'd really be good in that left wing spot for us at the moment. But we went for Dan Juma, obviously, because yeah. And but yeah, I think it's really hard to call. But if I was to put some money on it, I think I'd go with like a draw, 1-1 or something like that. I think they're going to maybe have a bit more for us than the likes of West Ham.
Yeah, I think they will have a little bit more. And I love how you said it's going to be the injury derby, because I think you're right. And I think how are you kind of looking at it, Kerrie? How are you kind of going into this game? What's your kind of battle plan, so to speak?
I'm really nervous about this one. Even though they've got 8 or 9 players out of their first team, I just think they're kind of streaky. So they started the season off quite poorly, and now they're kind of getting all the runs of fixtures together, getting all those wins on the board. Obviously, had a good game against PSG, got robbed, let's be honest. And obviously they picked up the 1-0 win against Man United, which I don't think they played particularly well against Manchester United, especially with Manchester United struggling as well, even though, I don't know. But I just think, I'm hard to call it. I'd like to say we'd win. Again, if it's another home game, nice Sunday afternoon, 4:30 kickoff. But I am nervous about this one because I think it's quite feisty. I remember last season when we played them at home, we lost, I think it was 3-1 in the end, and we started the game really well there. Typical 15, 20 minutes, that's really good. And then they kind of just ate us up. But yeah, I don't know. Anthony Gordon frightens me. He terrifies me. Isak, again, I can't remember if he's picked up an injury. There's been so many in the front line as well. I can't even remember who's playing. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really tough one to call. But obviously, I think I'm with you on this one, Sonny. I think it's going to be a draw, but I'm hoping for a win.
Better than the 6-1 that was the other week, a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not feeling that kind of vibe. But I think for me as well, Anthony Gordon winds me up. I don't know why. He just infuriates me. I think he's one of those players, like we always say, if he was on our team, we'd love him to bits. But if he's on another team, you wouldn't. I mean, Sonny, I keep saying Sonny instead of Sonny. How would you kind of stop Anthony Gordon? What would be the player that maybe do you man mark him, or do you just stop the passes going through to him?
I think, you see, obviously that's down Poro's side as well. He handled Doku quite well. But I think, when Grealish came on, I think going back to that game, like we sort of, I know he scored, but we sort of did handle him well. And there was like sort of cover. So you've probably got to ask your 8 on that side, whoever plays there, to sort of give him that cover. And, just sort of, Newcastle like going to the line as well. Like they love like those sort of deep crosses. I just think that's what you got to do, sort of double up, give as much cover as possible in those positions, get your midfielder, maybe put a Højbjerg on him and sort of, that's how you sort of change the team around a bit, because otherwise you've sort of got them running the pitch sort of thing. Because I think our midfield could handle Newcastle's midfield. I think, Joe Linton, I don't think he's as good as everyone says he is. He'll score now, I've said that. But and he did score when Steve Bruce was the manager when they won 1-0 at the new stadium. So, is what it is. But then again, I just feel like it's just weird because they've got so many injuries the more you think about it. Like, Lascelles has been playing over Botman and the goalkeeper, as I previously mentioned. But Gordon seems to just be cropping up and actually scoring some goals now. Really good winger for England under 21s as well. Just a shame he doesn't play for us, as you say.
No, it is annoying, but I think I would like him if he was at Spurs. Obviously, I'd like anyone who comes to Spurs. It just winds me the hell up. I don't know what it is. But Kerrie, I want to get the last thoughts from you. And obviously, we've spoken a little bit about Romero potentially coming in against West Ham. You'd like to think after his suspension, he's going to keep his head. And I don't want to tempt fate and say that he won't, but do you think having that little break and having that suspension is hopefully kind of the warning signs for him to be like, right, I need to chill out a bit?
I don't think so. I think he'll always play with the mentality that he's got to win every single ball, and he's going to do he's kind of doing what Ange Ball does in a sense. Like he's it could be naive at times, but he's always going to stick with what he knows. He's going to stick with what he's good at. No, I think Romero will be straight back into the thick of it. I'm just praying he doesn't get a red card again.
Yeah, I don't fancy that with Christmas coming up, etc., etc. But it will be a very interesting game, obviously against Newcastle, and obviously before that West Ham. But I'll be dissecting it all again next Monday, so make sure you stick around for that one. But I want to say a big thank you, obviously to Mitch that was on earlier, and to you two. So we'll go around the table and say our goodbyes. So Kerrie, I'll start with you first. It's been lovely to have you on the show. So where can everybody find you?
Thanks, Hollie. I've had a really good time. You can find me on X and Instagram at KJacobsBryan, and I'll be active over there as well. A lot of the football across the Christmas period as well. Probably moaning a lot, but it's what it is.
No, it's good therapy, man. It is good therapy. But no, Kerrie, it's been amazing to have you, and Sonny as well. Thank you again, my friend, from coming on. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it. Obviously, Hollie's got a great live stream here as well, so subscribe to her. But yeah, catch me on Sonny Talk Spurs on YouTube, and then Sonny Snelling on all my other socials, mainly Twitter, I'd say. But yeah, catch me on there as dissecting games, talking about Ange Ball, all that sort of good stuff.
No, I love it. Like I say, it's been a good show tonight, obviously, to talk about that draw and obviously the games coming up. Thank you as well to everybody that's been in the chat. Really appreciate it. Everybody that's rewatching. Last week I was on a work event, so I didn't get a chance to upload the audio to Spotify. But this week, this show will be on Spotify. So keep your ear rolls open for that one. And like we always say on the channel, and like we always do as Spurs fans, until next time, come on you Spurs.